What should you do if your case ends up in the news? This is Christina Williams with Just Criminal Law.
And David Mann, legal storytelling specialist. Well, this is a really interesting question now that we see media affecting so much. And of course, every media story is still a story. So how does this sway jurors?
Sure. So every time a story gets published or mentioned by the media, there's one side of the story that's being represented, and usually that side of the story is what has been filed in court. Now, keep in mind the prosecutor is the person who's filing stuff in court 9 times out of 10, so what hits the news is favorable to the state or the prosecution and not the client.
Okay, so now it's going to trial, and a jury has to make a decision. But first, the jury has to be selected, right? So can you ask them questions about if they've seen this or not?
Yes. So before a trial starts, there's a process that the attorneys go through where they choose from an entire panel of people only 12. And so those 12 people will hear the facts of the case. And it's very important. This is the only way that you can deal with it 9 times out of 10. And that is making sure that if your jury has heard any facts or circumstances surrounding the case, that they still haven't formed an opinion as to your client's guilt or innocence. And this takes place in what's called voir dire.
Okay, or voir dire, depending on where you are in the country. So you get to ask the questions of the jurors about their backgrounds and things like that, and the prosecution also gets to do this until you arrive upon 12 jurors that both sides agree on. But what happens if that's just not working out?
Sure, we've had a case actually here in my hometown where we couldn't get a jury. And, there was a very good reason as to why we couldn't get a fair jury. And that had to do with the number of people charged. So it involved a double homicide where you had 4 juveniles or 4 younger men charged, and then kind of the kingpin or the leader of it all also charged. And so over the course of 2 or 3 years, that story and the alleged facts and circumstances surrounding it were in all of the news outlets on repeat. And so that particular case was very interesting. It involved a stepdad who was accused of molesting his stepson and then recruiting all of these young men to help him get rid of the witness, his stepson. And so his stepson is shot. He's found shot in bed, actually by my investigator, my current investigator. And then not only do they kill the complaining witness, but they kill one of the other men who was part of the conversation or the conspiracy to kill the complaining witness. And so we have 2 people dead, and in, any community, let alone my small town, this hit the paper repeatedly, and, you had to be basically living under a rock to not know what was going on in this case. So when it came time, after all of the murder trials, when it came time to actually prosecute the kingpin or the man in charge for the sexual assault, we were not able to find a single juror that hadn't heard about the case and formed an opinion as to his guilt.
So at that point, you can't cancel the trial, so what do you do?
Well, a motion is put before the judge where the attorneys, say, hey, judge, we are not able to try this case. The defendant isn't able to get a fair trial here because of everybody's opinions that they've formed as to his guilt, and we need to change venues. That is, we need to go to a community in Wyoming where the jury pool or the members of the community haven't heard about this case, or even if they have heard about it, at least haven't formed an opinion as to the defendant's guilt.
All right. So does that usually, are there other ways besides changing the whole place that the case is tried that this can be handled?
Not really. I mean, all of the the witnesses and the players, so to speak, the defense attorney, the prosecutor, law enforcement, and even the judge, they all end up going to a different county, staying in a hotel and doing the trial, the 1 week or 2 week long trial out of the home jurisdiction and in the new county. And that's really the only way to get a fair jury in a case like this. Now, it is the exception. Most times, I will let you know, a judge doesn't want to uproot everybody, and it's really only in these extreme circumstances that I've seen these motions granted.
Okay, so that's assuming that the media is only local and not national, but you would only be handling a case that would have local media coverage, right?
Well, there's, been a time or two when, believe it or not, some of our cases have gotten mentioned nationally, but generally we don't have anything going on here that's on blast nationally, so to speak.
Well, it's true that media is saturating everything, so this must be much more of an issue than it's been in the past.
Absolutely. It's so easy for people to, obtain information about a case, so easy to research it. And, that's a good point, David. As information becomes more and more accessible to people, with a simple Google search, really our legal system probably should pivot and maybe take these motions a little more seriously.
Well, it sounds like, like most things we talk about, it's more complicated than the average person can deal with. So they might want to get in touch with you if they are in some kind of trouble. So how would they do that?
We'll include a link in the description where they can call, text, or chat with a member of my team anytime, day or night. Here at Just Criminal Law, we know you only get one shot at justice, so make yours count.